The Dallas Cowboys held their pre-draft press conference on Tuesday. Do we have any takeaways at all? We'll debate that and more on this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKDOWNNFL for $20 off your first purchase. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. The Dallas Cowboys held their pre-draft press conference today, and it was as enjoyable as a root canal. Actually, that's a lie. I had a root canal this morning. That was more fun than listening to this pre-draft press conference. But later, before we get into any of the takeaways, what was just your general vibes of this presser?
I was sitting there thinking, man, I wish I had whatever drugs Marcus was on during the root canal to watch this. Honestly, for the first 15 minutes, I'm sitting there watching it, and then I think I even tweeted out, is anybody getting anything out of this? Like, because it really didn't seem like we seemingly got a 10-minute dissertation on draft 101 from Jerry Jones. It was like someone had dug up John Madden and had John Madden give us a quick 10-minute explainer on what the draft is, right? It really seemed like it was kind of like rehashing seriously just what the draft even is. And then, as we got on, Jerry started speaking a little bit more. He started saying a lot more things, but I don't know how much obvious stuff there was. But I think once you kind of like cross analyze some of what he said with some of the other things,
it's never straightforward. You have to piece things together like a puzzle,
and you gotta like if there's like footnotes and like you gotta have references.
There's
to
stories
like other
and all that kind of stuff.
Season.
Yeah, it's analogies.
I think once I kind of hacked through all of that, I think that you and I kind of got the same takeaways from this. Is that it seems pretty clear that the Cowboys are focused on an offensive lineman as their first round pick, with the potential of maybe a pass rusher being kind of an outlier. I'm going that basically on that whole section of the press conference in which they talked about how Mike McCarthy has a history of playing with teams that have 4 or 5 first or second rounders on their defensive line, and so obviously the Cowboys don't have that right now. So they've got 2. So I think that could be a little morsel that maybe they like one of these pass rushers a lot, that if they fell to them, there could be an opportunity for them to pull the trigger there. But it does seem, generally speaking, that they were very interested in answering questions about offensive line and clearly had done a lot of work there. And I don't think that surprises anybody.
Yeah. So Mike McCarthy talked about how in the division, if you look at the interior defensive line, he basically was naming off all the players that the Cowboys will have to face, at defensive tackle, whether it's Dexter Lawrence or Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. I mean, the list goes on and on. So that led me to believe, if Mike McCarthy had his way, I bet you they would take a guard or a center in round 1.
Well, we got to talk about the other thing that came out, right? Is that Jerry let it slip that there was an offensive lineman last year that you would have, that he was talking to Mike at the time.
He said, you beat me down with, right?
You beat me down with that I wanted to take. So I think that what that is telling us, that now was new information, was that Bergeron was likely a McCarthy guy, right? Yeah. So having said that, I would not be shocked if McCarthy circled back around and said, hey, remember last year, that offensive lineman you didn't let me have? I'm coming for him this year. Yeah, exactly.
I do also like that Mike McCarthy slipped in. I really like a running back.
Yeah.
Give me one of those running backs. That'd be great.
It'd be nice to have a starting running back on the team, by the way. That would be something that would be worth having at some point. Yeah.
Jerry Jones also talked about the offensive line. Somebody asked him, why have you had so much success drafting offensive linemen? And he said, well, offensive linemen are usually the best looking, the smartest, and they end up owning teams. Jerry Jones played guard in the SEC. Wow.
That classic Arkansas smile while he was
Yeah.
saying it the whole time too. So yeah.
My honestly, my biggest takeaway is unless it's one certain defensive end from a Big Ten school, I
Well,
would be almost shocked if the Cowboys don't take an offensive lineman in round one. It just seems like everything from that presser, whether they were directly telling you or indirectly telling you, makes it sound like they're going offensive line in round one.
so you think Michael Hall is a defensive end, is what you're saying?
Well, 75 pounds. No,
Anything's possible at this point.
yeah, I'm coming out of that press conference feeling pretty good that it's going to be an offensive lineman. And Mike McCarthy talked about the position flexibility with Tyler Smith. He didn't seem like he really cared all that much about it. Like he even said, like, if it comes down to tackle or, interior player, we're just going to take the highest graded player on our board, which I'm going to believe is probably going to be an interior offensive lineman.
Yeah, I mean, I think depending on exactly how it falls, right? Like it does seem like more likely than not when that kind of when you go through these exercises and you're going through these mock drafts. And again, like who knows if any of our mock drafts are right or close or whatever, right? We'll find out here in a couple hours, right? 48 hours. I think you no matter what, like you are likely to get a good offensive lineman, and just depending on how the stack comes off the board, that could be a tackle, could be a center, it could be a guy that is a tackle guard type, it could be it could be any combination of those. And I think that's what we've seen a lot, is that if anything, there's just a bunch of different flavors of these offensive linemen, guys that can play multiple positions, guys that are tackle onlys, guys that are center onlys, guys that are guard onlys. And I think that Tyler Smith, as we talked about before, ultimately becomes the kind of most valuable piece here, because he allows that whoever it is to fit into their position. Right now, will we prefer him to play guard, Tyler Smith to play guard? Yes, absolutely, because he's excellent there. But if he had to kick out and play tackle, or if you drafted Jordan Morgan, right, and you're trying to decide which one of them is playing guard, which one of them is playing tackle, it's nice that you can be open and agnostic and do what you can to kind of play your best five out there. That does give you a lot more options.
I will say one more thing that's making me believe that the Cowboys are going to take a center in round one is they asked Steven about, like, okay, what young players could potentially make the leap, and become, backup into a starter. And the very first name out of his mouth was TJ Bass, who we talked about as a potential center option. I think he's a left guard, probably. Wouldn't you agree, Landon?
Well, we've hypothesized about playing him center because we want him on the field, not necessarily that he is a center, right?
So I do wonder, like, are they viewing it as, hey, Tyler Smith at left tackle, TJ Bassett left guard, and then if we draft a center, we've got our 5 offensive linemen, and then we can kind of go from there. Like, I do wonder if that's, I'm not saying that's the plan, but that's like option A.
Yeah, and I think that if that is option A, that is that's a change in posture a little bit than what we've kind of expected. I would definitely say that. So, but yeah, I absolutely think that should be on the table, and that's something that the Cowboys fans should prepare themselves for, is that they're not just going to be looking for a tackle. They're going to be looking for the best offensive lineman, because offensive line is a weak link system. You need to kind of upgrade that last link. And however you can do that with the combination of guys you have on your offensive line, that's ultimately the most important, is to get the best player on that 5.
So that was about it for the draft part of the pre-draft press conference, because the other 50 minutes of the conversation was about some of the contract stuff, the offseason plans. I want to talk about Dak and the idea of the Cowboys drafting or maybe not drafting a quarterback this year. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer that it gets to first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Save up to 60% off buying last minutes for sports, concerts, comedy events, and theater events near you. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We want to let you know that the Locked On NFL Mock Draft Show is available now. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on Locked On NFL Draft to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft Show is available now on Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Layden, Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones spent a lot of time discussing the Dak Prescott contract. Jane Slater, kudos to her. She pressed the Joneses hard about why didn't you try to get a deal done with Dak Prescott sooner? What were your takeaways on their thoughts on Dak?
Well, I mean, listen, I do think that Jerry and Stephen have a point to a degree, right? Like, listen, Cowboys fandom, a lot of folks have pointed out that this deal could have been done earlier. Several of these deals could have been done earlier, right? But I do think that there isn't enough talk about the fact that it's two sides to make a deal, right? And that there is leverage points that for both of these, contract negotiation teams that don't necessarily, aren't necessarily conducive to writing a contract quickly, right? Aren't necessarily conducive to getting a deal done early. Getting a deal done early is great for a team, but it's not necessarily great for the player. It's not necessarily great for what the player is looking to achieve financially. Allowing some of these players to have, for CeeDee Lamb, every wide receiver contract that gets signed before him is a benefit to him.
Yes.
Unless someone signs a really stupid deal that suddenly puts them underneath the market, which, that has happened before. And that I think last year, right? Some of the running back market stuff, running backs really hurt their fellow running backs by taking a bath on some of these deals. Right.
Yep.
But for the most part, these premier positions, pass rusher, quarterback, wide receiver, 3 positions that the Cowboys currently have guys that they need to re-sign, there's leverage, there's negotiation leverage. There's the kind of trend of where contracts are going. So this idea that just because the Cowboys are at the negotiation table with their negotiation pants on, ready to kind of make a deal, and that should be enough, that isn't enough, and some of these teams, and I think that is shown, especially with the CeeDee Lamb contract, right? And I think they confirmed what we've been talking about, right? Is that these wide receivers all work under the same agency, right? There's no benefit for the agencies, who are the ones who are really running this negotiation, to make a deal, a sweetheart deal on any of these 3 players, right? It's Ayuk, Lamb, and Jefferson, right?
Well, we should also mention Jamar Chase is also part of this, who would like to get a deal. I don't believe T. Higgins is rep by the same agency, but he's also
interested.
but he's very much interested in what these other receivers get paid. So there is a log jam at the wide receiver position where we're just waiting for one domino to fall, and then I bet you 2 other deals get done within the week.
I agree, and I think it's fair for Jerry to say something like, what in the world would give you the idea that we weren't at the table? I don't know the exact quote, but yeah. I think that's fair. Listen, they deserve criticism? 100%. They deserve a ton of criticism, but let's also be fair about it, right? The Joneses, just because they, even if the Joneses were willing to pay what the guys wanted necessarily, or a reasonable rate for those players, that doesn't mean that the player is necessarily coming to the negotiation table at a timely manner when the team wants. There's a reason that deadlines make deals here. So, I think it's a lot of hemming and hawing and trying to make themselves, look better, and trying to defend themselves from what's going on in the media. But at the same time, I think about 4%, they have a point. That there is only so much they can do. Now they should be blamed for the rest, but as far as forcing the other side to negotiate at a time when you want to, I don't know that that's something that they can do.
One of the things that Jerry Jones said very plainly is they asked him about drafting a quarterback high, like in round 1, if the right quarterback fell to him, and his exact answer is, "We want Dak." right? Like clear as day, we want Dak Prescott. Coming out of that press conference, this was the first time where I'm really wondering, does Dak want Dallas? I really wondered, now that Dak knows that he's going to be a free agent in 2025, with nothing preventing him from staying. Like the Cowboys can't hold a franchise tag over his head or anything like that. I'm really wondering if it's more Dak might not want to sign a contract. He wants to hit free agency before he makes any decision, rather than the Cowboys dragging their feet to get a deal done. That's the way I'm leaning now.
That's certainly possible. I mean, it certainly could be the case that, you know, I mean, let's put it this way.
Let me give you another reason. Jerry Jones spent a lot of time talking about recruiting and scholarships and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're almost feeling now like they're having to recruit Dak rather than sign him. And those are two very different things, right? Basically trying to convince Dak, like, hey, this is the best situation for you to stay. Sign a contract here and we'll put the right team around you. I don't know. I just wonder, if you combine Dak's comments from this weekend and then some of the comments that Jerry made, I do wonder, like, maybe Dak is more open to the idea of leaving than the Joneses are of having Dak leave.
You know, it's funny because I kind of got the sense of the opposite. Maybe not the opposite, but like I kind of got the sense that the Joneses were not interested in hearing about a quarterback this year, because they really do view this as the do or die year for these two folks, right? Like for Mike and for Dak.
Yeah.
I just don't, but I guess the bottom line is that either one of these situations, I still can't see them drafting a quarterback.
No, and that's one of the biggest takeaways. Like we talked about it on yesterday's show. It doesn't make sense for a million different reasons. And I know what the Cowboys have been doing this offseason doesn't make a lot of sense, at least by what the Joneses are telling us.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense at all to draft a QB this year, especially with them talking. They talked up Cooper Rush for a good 5 minutes on how much they love Cooper Rush.
And they've drafted their quarterback this year.
Yeah.
Like they've already did it. Trey Lance is their quarterback who they drafted this year with their 4th round pick. Like, yeah, it's just, to me, when I look at all the elements here, it feels like the Cowboys have set themselves up for one last hurrah to kind of see how this goes. And then who knows what happens at the end of the season. I don't know that they know necessarily what they plan on doing beyond. I think what they have done they wanted to make sure that they had an out this year, like after this season, an off ramp, right? So I think what's really difficult is trying to find a way to be competitive this next season while creating off ramps in the situation that you have, where you've added void years to major contracts, you've spread out money, you've committed to dead money. Creating an off ramp means that you have to have an off season where you are offloading a bunch of dead money. And I kind of feels like that's what they're trying to work towards,
it is.
Right?
Yeah. And I also wonder if they feel like, hey, if we go through this year with Dak Prescott, 2024, he plays well, but we come up short again in the playoffs. That's 9 years. That's not an insignificant amount of time. So maybe they feel like, hey, we've gone as far as we can with this version of the team. It's nothing against Dak, but let's try something different moving forward. At least it gives them that out. I don't love that strategy, because there's a lot of teams that would love to have Dak Prescott and give you the chance every year of making a mistake in the playoffs and falling short of the playoffs, right? But I can also see the other way of, like, it's clearly we've had the best version of this team and it's come up short every time.
That's my thing, right? Is that what do Cowboys fans want? Do you want to continually be competitive, but just coming up short every year, which is a fine thing. I mean, only one team can win the Super Bowl every year. Do you want to break through? Because if you want to break through, it kind of feels like you got to do something major to break through at this point. And so listen, I can't be upset, as mad as we can be about the Joneses about a lot of different things. If they are honestly considering being brave enough to move on from Dak Prescott to try to start over, I mean, I love Dak Prescott. I want him on this team. I want to see him succeed and win a Super Bowl, but I'm at least happy that they would be willing to take a charge of the team well enough to do something like that and actually shake it up enough to make a move, as opposed to just trying to like gently extract cash from Cowboys fans year after year without any real effort towards making a Super Bowl.
I wanted to talk about some of the other weird quotes and things that came out of the press conference today, including Jerry Jones talking about Ezekiel Elliott's contract being the reason why
Yeah.
Tyron Smith's not on the roster. We will get to all that next. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes we need the opportunity to get something off of our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who is unbiased in your life. So today I want to tell you how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking the same thing this week. Why do we have pre-draft press conferences? Most teams don't even tell you anything. Like, just talk to us after the draft once you've made all the decisions. Crazy. I don't get it. Therapy can be different for everyone. That was not therapy for me. I'll tell you that much. But most of us have much bigger problems than our favorite sports teams and their pre-draft press conferences. But it's important to get things off of your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is visit betterhelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Listen, this is the best time of year for sports bettors. You've got the NBA playoffs going on right now. You got the NHL playoffs. We got the NFL draft. We've got golf. So much to bet on right now. And FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That is $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks. Go bet on the NBA championship, which I think the Denver Nuggets are going to win after taking a 2-0 lead against my Lakers. Do it all on an app that is safe and secure and super easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Just recapping the Dallas Cowboys pre-draft press conference. All right, let's get to some of the weird stuff. Jerry Jones was talking about the decision to give Ezekiel Elliott a contract extension, and he told all the media members to raise your hand if you thought it was a bad deal at the time to sign Zeke. I so wish that I could have been there.
They didn't pan the camera around, unfortunately, to see if anyone raised their hands.
But he said that one of the reasons why they weren't able to bring back Tyron Smith is because of the Ezekiel Elliott contract, and I don't understand the reasoning behind that at all.
Okay, so I've been trying to understand this too. I have to think that it has to be the dead money that was on the books this year from Zeke still, that he's implying that dead money was the preventing force from the Cowboys matching the deal that the Jets gave Tyron Smith. Again, I don't understand why the Cowboys just can't tell the truth when the truth will do. Right? Yeah. Like that's my biggest thing here with all this crap is that why don't you just come out and say, hey, we're trying to get our books in order this year. We're trying to clear some stuff up. We don't necessarily have the cash to pay all three of these guys in this offseason and do a bunch of free agents deals.
Or just say, just give a half truth. Say we're trying to get younger on the offensive line. It was really hard dealing with Tyron's injury, and as great as he was last year, we felt like we needed to get a little bit younger on the offensive line. Say that.
And it was an opportunity, right? Look, okay, would we love to have Tyron Smith back? Yes, but at the same time, we have this golden opportunity to actually replace him because this draft class is providing for us. We would be dumb not to draft an offensive lineman here, even if Tyron Smith was on the team. And so why not kind of lean further into it and decide to get younger on the team where you're going to need to anyways.
Yes.
So there are so many examples of just this kind of thing where it's like the truth is fine. The reality is fine. Just be honest here. And I think people will respect the answer a lot more, but instead what Jerry does is repeats the phrase all in 5 times in a row while still kind of caveating on it. It was saying all in, we're all in on these young players. That's what you're all in on, not all in on the season, because that's what Cowboys Nation is. People, when they say all in, Jerry is talking about a different kind of all in than the rest of y'all are. Yeah. And I think he knows that, and he needs to stop it because it's not endearing him to
the
anybody.
Message isn't getting out there, right?
It's not like it's not helping the situation at all.
No.
They're doing what they're doing. They should be straightforward and honest about it. And even with Dak Prescott, like, look, it's fair to say, look, we are on both sides evaluating each other. Dak's evaluating whether he wants to be with Dallas next year. We're evaluating whether we want Dak next year. So we're going to take one more year to kind of figure this out because, and I think it's fair, like you said, the Cowboys have done a lot to put things in place for this team to make runs, and it hasn't worked out, right? Like it doesn't feel like at least immediately they're going to be able to put themselves in a better situation than they've had in these previous last 3 years. So
nope.
I just think that it's okay to just admit that and say that and be upfront that saying, hey, it's all on the line for people this year, but not because we're dumping all of our money into this team, but because people are going to lose their jobs if they don't win this year.
All right, I'm going to give you two more little quotes. I want you to pick which one you want to talk about because they're both absolutely wild. The first one, Jerry Jones was asked about trading down. He said, "Yeah, we'd be open to it. But you don't trade down with a Micah Parsons on the board." The Cowboys did trade down with Parsons on the board in 2021, just to be clear. Yep. Stephen Jones was also asked about winning the offseason. He said that they won the offseason last year after trading for Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore, and it didn't bring him any more postseason success. So that's why they're probably not interested in doing that stuff anymore.
Okay, I'll get to that second one. All right. Winning the offseason was strong commentary, obviously. But I don't think that Steven's point is necessarily wrong, right? Like in the sense that they didn't. Does anybody honestly believe that they didn't do enough to make this team good enough last year to go where they needed to go?
I think people believe that they did the bare minimum of what a contending team would do. You traded 2 day 3 picks, and you signed Chuma Dogan free agency. That was those were your moves.
I guess my question here is that does anyone honestly believe that if the Cowboys had made the 2 or 3 extra moves that whatever, I don't even know what the 2 or 3 extra moves would have been, but like,
are you saying like if they would have traded for a defensive tackle, a starting level defensive tackle, it's the difference in them winning the Packers game or not?
Or at least getting within 28 points in the first half? Yeah. I mean, let's be honest about our own team, guys. We got our butts kicked at home when we were completely healthy with a good roster. Yeah. Adding a player or two is not going to move the needle that
Probably
much.
Not. No.
So that's where I'm at with this, is that we need to stop forming hearts around a team that fell woefully short last year. Even a tinker move here or there probably wasn't going to help this team, at least to the point where it was going to get to where we all want to go, which is, again, why I'm advocating that it may be time to consider starting fresh, starting with the new group, because we've done this year in and year out, and tinkering with it doesn't seem to fix it.
Okay, what about the trading down part with Jerry Jones?
That's just dumb. Like, that's just Jerry. That's just dumb. Jerry forgot. Like, it's like you don't trade down for Micah Parsons. You traded down for Micah Parsons.
A better example would have been CeeDee Lamb. Like, you don't trade down from a CeeDee Lamb.
That makes more sense, right? But like, yeah, I mean,
I do say Jerry sounded very confidently that they're going to have trade offers available, and I wonder if they already have some deals lined up, but like teams.
Call me when you're on the clock, right? Yes. Like that sort of deal.
So
right?
We'll see if the Cowboys do end up trading down, but it feels very likely that they're going to have multiple calls when they are on the clock. So I wouldn't be surprised at a trade down, but I wouldn't be surprised if they just picked up offensive lineman at 24 that they believe is a day 1 starter, and we'll go to round 2 and find a running back for Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, I mean, most of the times you hope for a trade back, but you don't think there's very many opportunities. This year, there's so many tackles, so many wide receivers, and quarterbacks, honestly, that could be down near where you are. Yeah. Like if Penix or Bo Nix fell, those are trade opportunities for guys coming back into the first round. Suddenly you have these opportunities. I do think the Cowboys will have more opportunities than normal to trade back than they would in a normal year.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every day. On tomorrow's show, we're going to answer your Twitter questions as we get really close to the draft. So make sure you guys tune in for that. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcast. Go follow the show on YouTube. Go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.